We'll call this one They Know. So those of you of a certain age who are British like me will remember a TV programme called Angels, and it was set in a hospital, and it was about a group of doctors and nurses, and yeah, it was called Angels, right? So there was no accident there. That's because that's what we were supposed to think about these people, that they were upstanding and noble people and only cared about their patients and were overworked, and it wasn't just this work of fiction. It was other things too, but the main thing that was going on was that the government wanted us to view the NHS and the people that worked in it, doctors and nurses, as being extremely good, upstanding, morally virtuous people. Earlier this week, Mike Yeadon on his Telegram channel referenced a video from Lee, the Veritas Vincent channel. He's on YouTube. I'll put a link to this video. Anyway, it's about Lee's dad who was ill and went to an NHS hospital, and you know, so I think it was like an 8-hour wait for an ambulance and stuff. So, which is just completely unacceptable. Anyway, yeah, Lee's mum's also at the hospital, and she's talking to a nurse about Lee's dad, her husband, and this nurse basically, when Lee's mum asked, you know, or told her that this was probably a result of the, let's call it the medical experiment, the nurse replied with the phrase, "Yes, I know." So she was basically admitting that she knew that the medical experiment was harming people. So it's Mike Yeadon's opinion, and it's mine too, that these NHS doctors and nurses knew that the medical experiment wasn't doing people much good. In fact, it was causing them great harm, as early as 2021, when maybe within a month or two of the experiment starting. It's inconceivable that they haven't known, which then begs the question, well, two questions. Why haven't they spoken up about the harms caused by the medical experiment? And then the second one is that why are many of these NHS doctors and nurses still happy to inflict the medical experiment on our friends and family? So yes, they know about what this medical experiment is doing to people, and furthermore, they knew about it years ago. As I say, 2021, so 4 years ago. Something else I think is quite interesting is that it's just anecdotal from me, is that when the medical experiment was first rolled out, I did know people who were immediate casualties of the experiment. You know, something cataclysmic happened to their own health pretty shortly after they took part in the experiment. However, unfortunately, I don't think that this is the end of it. I think the experiment is a slow-acting poison. It's probably, Mike Yeadon can maybe pick up on this, but it was probably designed to be slow-acting. And what I'm seeing personally now, through people that I know, and also people who know other people, is more and more serious health problems. You know, cancers that are reoccurring, and deaths from heart attacks. So this Saturday morning, my wife is looking at the Daily Mail online. I never bother with all of that. You know, she seems to be more interested in what's going on in England than me. But anyway, she basically started to read out this Daily Mail article. I'll put a link in now. So I've got to do the next bit. I'm going to have to use a bit of irony here, yeah, to avoid censorship. So it says, warning as record number of NHS doctors and nurses reject flu jab. Uptake falls from 80% to 37% in 4 years. And as I say, this article was published a few days ago on the 17th of May in the Daily Mail. So it's another article lamenting the anti-vaxxers amongst NHS frontline doctors and nurses. They're all filthy anti-vaxxers in that only just over a third of them had their very important flu jab, which is absolutely essential for patient health, isn't it? It also says in the article, quoting the article here, patient groups describe the level of uptake as shocking and accuse refuseniks, yes, they use that word, of negligently fueling sickness and putting vulnerable people at risk of death. Difficult to know what to make of that one. Again, those of you of a certain age will remember this tune. Jackanory, bum bum. It continues. The all-time low came as overwhelming demand for care forced over a dozen NHS trusts to declare critical incidents. And then there's some quotes from Professor Stephen Powis, who's the NHS Medical Director of England, and he said, "I'm urging patients to get the vaccine, saying it could protect them and others from the virus." Now, at this point, I was a bit unsure. Do they mean the COVID-19, or are they talking about the flu virus? You know, like or rhinovirus? You know, which one? The virus. But it continues, but new figures obtained by the Liberal Democrats show most NHS staff failed to follow their employees' own advice. The proportion of NHS frontline staff getting the flu jab was 64% in 2016-17. So you could say, well, even back then, over a third of NHS doctors and nurses were filthy anti-vaxxers, you know, in terms of their own behaviour. You know, they were quite happy to jab up our friends and family, but, you know, what was good for the goose wasn't good for the gander then, was it? Anyway, it continues. In 2024-25, only 37% had it, which is a record low. So you might have heard me say this before, that ignore what people say. People will say all sorts of things. If you really want an insight into somebody's behaviour, watch what they do. So these guys, NHS doctors and nurses, are not just been rejecting the COVID vaccines. They've also been of an anti-vax mindset when it comes to the flu jabs. And they've been like this for a long time, but it seems to have sped up. You know, 64% had it in 2016-17. Now, only 37% had it in the last year, 24 to 25. So it seems to me that this anti-vax kind of hesitancy in the NHS amongst frontline staff has sped up over the last 4 years. So somebody tell me again, like in the comments, what happened 4 years ago that could have caused this increase in anti-vax mindset, vaccine hesitancy, I think the phrase is. You know, it's almost like they know. There was also some quotes in the article from this guy, Dennis Reed, from some organisation called Silver Voices. Does that exist? I don't know. Anyway, is that just, who knows what that is, or if it even exists. And he said, oh, the jab, it should be a condition of employment for NHS staff. And he actually said, Most NHS staff will be okay, but their patients may not survive. And them refusing to have the flu jab, it's personal negligence, he said. Hospitals will have fared better over the winter if more staff had bothered to get it being the flu jabs. We know it's effective. Now, what's interesting there is that Dennis Reed must have a time machine, so he's able to go back in time and replay history, and a history that never existed, where all NHS staff had the flu jab, and then they could see what patient demand would have been like compared to what actually happened. So I presume he's got a time machine, because otherwise what he's saying would be a logical fallacy, wouldn't it? The article also gave data about variations in flu jab uptake amongst NHS doctors and nurses between NHS trusts. So this next stat is unbelievable. In Camden and Islington, only 8.8% of NHS doctors and nurses had the winter flu jab in 2024-25, the last winter. So less than 10%, less than 9%. So that means over 90% of NHS doctors and nurses in Camden and Islington are filthy anti-vaxxers. They don't want it. So this begs the question, like, what do these people know about the flu vaccines? And why are they still pushing the flu vaccines on our friends and families when over 90% of them are rejecting them? So going back to the start of the video with Lee and his dad and Mike Yeadon saying they know, well, it's quite evident from their own behaviour that they do know. You know, as I say, in that Camden and Islington trust, 90% of them are filthy jab dodgers. But, you know, the question is, what percentage of them are still jabbing our friends and family? That's and why aren't they speaking about the things that are obviously concerning them? You know, they've got these anti-vax tendencies. So why is that? Why are they not having these life-saving flu vaccinations? Why? What is it? There must be a reason for it. And why aren't they talking about that reason? So all of this got me thinking, not just about vaccines, but about other medical treatments. So I've been watching, I'll put this a link to this in the video description too. I watched a very interesting video about cholesterol, Dr. Anthony Shafee. Yeah, I'll put a link into it. I won't go into it any more detail, but I think you really should watch it. Absolutely superb stuff. So yeah, let's talk about other medications, you know, because you know, even for me, as soon as I turned 40 more or less, whenever I visited my NHS GP, they were always in a rush to take some blood and measure my cholesterol and then get me onto statins. I think I've said before, there was one NHS GP, I think he was a locum, a youngish guy, and like literally he was playing with his Porsche car keys on the table out in front of me during the consultation whilst he's trying to get me onto statins. Unbelievable. So yeah, so my feeling is, what percentage of NHS GPs are actually taking their own medicine when it comes to statins, or maybe blood pressure medications? You know, because obviously, you know, with the flu vaccines, they're still very keen to get us to take these medications, even though they're not. They're anti-vaxxers, but they don't want us to be anti-vaxxers. And I guess it's kind of down to performance related pay, isn't it? And maybe they feel they can't speak out about it because they're going to get struck off and they'll lose their jobs, and they won't be able to go hiking in Switzerland quite as often, or stay in as nice 5-star hotel, if they speak out and lose their jobs and lose their incomes. So yeah, what percentage of them are actually on? I'd love to know, because I will hazard a guess. I think it's not just vaccines that these guys are dodging. NHS doctors and nurses, I would imagine, will know what statins have been doing, because they've been prescribed to their patients for, well, practically decades. So they will know what these medications do to people, just like they'll know what the vaccines are doing to people. And obviously what they'll do is adjust their own behaviour accordingly to maximise their own health net benefit, won't they? So if there's something that they see their patients having and it's doing them harm, well, then self-interest will dictate that they will want to avoid that medication, won't they? And that's what we're seeing. So what I would not like to know, one more time, is what percentage of NHS GPs, what percentage of NHS nurses are on statins? As I say, my guess is very, very low. So yes, rounding things up, yeah, Mike Yeadon's right. They do know, they've known for a very long time, and they're doing two things wrong. First of all is that they keep on pushing these things that they're not prepared to have themselves. That's it's pretty unethical. They're doing it to profit from it, and yeah, it's just not on. It's not on, and they need to be speaking up about it. They're keeping their mouths shut about it as well, so that they keep their own jobs. So they're putting their jobs, their incomes, the status, I don't know, of being a doctor before our friends and families. That's what they're up to, and it's just beyond contempt. So that's all I want to say today. So God bless.